Good evening. Today is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. This is the regular Board of Education meeting of Rhinebeck Central School District. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 26th regular meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Jacqueline, any corrections? No? All those in favor? That motion passes. Next, we have a report from the superintendent.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to keep this report somewhat brief because we do have the initial budget presentation this evening, and I will be speaking a little bit more during that section of the evening as well. But last Monday, there was a mid-year town hall for all district families, and we had about 80 families who came on at least one part of the session. It was, a really good experience for everybody to have that mid-year check-in. Loud and clear, there was a desire among families for more contact time with the teachers. So we spent a little bit of time on that topic, as well as the vaccination efforts and our other COVID responses as it relates to that. 1 second, I just lost my Google. Sorry. I apologize for that. My screen went completely away, and I didn't want to ad-lib it because I did prepare all of these things. I did want to thank the families for sending their questions in advance. That helped me prepare for that presentation. And I did give to the board a copy of all of the slides that went along with that town hall session. There will be a discussion in the stakeholders committee report about the frequency of those. So I'd love input about that when we get to the reports and discussion section. Also, for the community's knowledge, several board members, myself and Mr. Brunel, met with some of our legislators. We met with both Senator Sue Serino and Assemblyman Kevin Cahill. And at the center of that meeting was a lot of discussion about the governor's proposed executive budget and the impact on schools. But in both of those sessions, we also spent considerable time talking about the mental health needs of students and the impact that has on our planning for returning from a post-pandemic world. And, that we thank both of those legislators for their time. And on behalf of the board, I did send thank yous out to both of them, a card, so that we can just their appreciation for their time. Also, today's update on the COVID dashboard for Dutchess County did show for the first time since early December that the total active cases under 1,000. And simultaneously, as of today, what has been reported to me from internal communications, we've had just over 100 Rhinebeck faculty and professional staff who've begun the vaccination process. So I'm very excited and happy that we're able to connect people to the doses. It's been quite a process. There's a lot of interesting things that we do on the back end to get those appointments, the awareness of those appointments out to our employees. And we've been very fortunate. I click really quickly when I get that notification, and we've gotten some good access to those appointments. But as I share both of those data points, I want to re-stress the importance of continuing to diligently enforce all of our effective mitigation measures that schools all over the country have used to effectively keep students safe. This is not the time to ease up on those regulations, but the health department has informed us that over time, and specifically as weather conditions allow us to use more open windows and outdoor spaces, we will be able to revise some of our operations to best meet the needs of our students. We did close the survey out that went out to families, students, and staff, and the principals are reviewing the survey data, and they will be integrating a summary of that data as part of their principals' mid-year reports that will be coming in the next meeting as well. Earlier this afternoon, Tom and I and Sheldon met about the capital project to talk a little bit about the closing out of that project and looking at the next steps there. So there'll be some follow-up that Tom will be able to present to the board after 1 or 2 meetings additional with the team. And lastly, as part of this report is tonight will begin the budgeting process, and I'll be starting this evening with an introduction of that, and Tom and Christine will be sharing an overview of some of our fixed costs for the upcoming school year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Albert? No, I would just say that that's great. That 100 have been vaccinated already. I think that's great progress, and then hopefully that continues as more vaccines become available. And I think you're right. We do need to keep vigilant and keep up with everything that we've been doing so far. Okay, we move on to reports and discussions. First report is community partner Rhinebeck PTSO. Welcome,
Wait,
ladies. Thanks for
wait.
coming. Oh,
Sorry,
Oh.
you missed public comment. Sorry. I know we
Have an
never have
opportunity
any,
for
but
public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? It's always so fast that I just kind of assume that we go right over it. Okay, so now we'll welcome the PTSO.
So
Welcome,
just
ladies.
as, by means of introduction, I want to thank both Nancy and Doreen are here tonight. And I'm just very glad that you took me up on the offer to come share what the PTSO has been doing, particularly during the pandemic and also in those years outside of the pandemic. And I hope that as people in the community view this, that they realize that there is an opportunity for them to be involved. I think the pandemic has introduced a lot of families back to the school through some of these town halls. And I wanted to reaffirm our commitment to you as an organization, offer our appreciation, and just affirm that, we're here for you to help in your mission to help our students as well.
Thank you. I guess I'll share my screen.
Yep.
Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it was mentioned, I'm Nancy Dibb. I'm a parent of 3 children in Rhinebeck. 2 of them are in Chancellor Livingston, one's in preschool. And so I've been part of the PTSO for a few years now. I'm the vice president for Chancellor Livingston. And so we're just going to give sort of an overview. I think, we do a lot in the background, kind of a small group of people that put in a lot of work and fundraise a lot. And it's maybe not clear to even the community what we do or that we're there or how they can participate if they want to. So of course, the pandemic has impacted us and we haven't had as many events as we had in the past. But at the same time, there hasn't been as many requests for funding because of that. Some things are not happening, so we're not, that funding is not being requested. So it sort of balances out with the fact that we haven't been able to do everything we normally do. Many of these events are annual events, but so I just have some things listed from what we did last year and hope to do again in the future when it's safe to do so. The back to school block party is just a fun community building event. Or actually, let me just start by mentioning our mission, which is to enhance the school community and learning experience for all students in the Rhinebeck Central School District. And so the block party is really a community building event. It's of no charge to families, and people donate food, people volunteer to cook, and it's just a major barbecue cookout at the Lions Mini Park. And so unfortunately that didn't happen this year, but we hope for that to resume because it's a real way to welcome the students and their families back to school at the beginning of the school year. We, generally have general meetings. We do events. The circus, the 6th grade circus, is fun for the children to participate in, being part of the circus, but it's also a fundraiser. Bingo night was something new that we did last year. The family bingo night, which actually brought in a lot of people. People looking for things to do to come out of the cold. And we are looking at how we could potentially do this as something remote, in the future. The kids' night out, which sometimes those are movie nights or craft nights. Sometimes they correlate with holidays to allow families to drop off their kids and go holiday shopping. Some of the other things, the holiday market was new. We started it 2 years ago, and so last year was the second, and it just grew larger and had more interest, and we added crafts, and people really enjoyed it. So a lot of these are events where families can come together at the school. The movie night, the trivia night, book fair is something that's done annually and will be coming up again. That's actually happening now, and this year it's going to be done remotely. The ice cream social, which usually goes along with the book fair and is actually one of our biggest fundraisers. and Earth Day celebration. There are lots of celebrations and things that we do. And all of the money that we raise goes towards these grants or events, things for the students or for the teachers. So I'm gonna let Doreen, I'm sorry, speak about some of those events, things that the money goes towards, things that we are raising money for.
Okay. Do I have to do anything or just read?
You could just talk.
Okay, so I'm Doreen Jampertone, and I'm actually the CLS teacher rep for the PTSO. I've been on it for a couple of years now, and it's a wonderful group of ladies and some gentlemen occasionally that we work together. And you can see on the field, the students get to go on field trips throughout the K-12 programs, and they are almost entirely funded, especially in the elementary school, by the PTSO. They give us the grants for tickets to get us into all these really great places like the zoo and Bowdoin Park. And they also help fund our favorite end of year party, which is the field day. And they do a lot of different things, helping bus trips down to New York City to do different things, historical field trips, going to see Broadway musicals. And they also support us in the classroom. So if we need certain kinds of games or manipulatives or learning tools, we know that we can fill out a grant, and we know that we can bring it to the PTSO, and they will help us to fund the things that we need that aren't necessarily curriculum, but enhance our curriculum. So they're a very important source for us to get some more things that we might need for our classrooms. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
You can read
So-
the list and see.
Yeah, there's a whole list of things. And I think that people don't realize it. They don't realize their kids go on field trips. You know, your children go on field trips and you don't pay for it, and you don't realize who paid for it. And it's the PTSO. We pay for almost basically every field trip, other things that we're asked for. And so there are some things that we continue to do in terms of fundraising, things that we were able to do this year. The ski club still happened. Also, I didn't mention all the after school activities that are not happening this year, but typically do. Those are all completely run by the PTSO, and it is also a fundraiser for us. The Spring Chocolates fundraiser is happening now. That's the Gertrude Hawk chocolates. And so it's going to be mostly online, but the brochures will be sent out in the elementary school. And you can order online and have it delivered to the school. You can have it delivered to your home for pay shipping, or you can have it delivered to the school and pick it up there for free shipping. And that actually was a large fundraiser for us last year that was very successful. The book fair is happening remotely for the first time ever. And we have some wonderful teachers who volunteer to read books, to the children remotely and sort of entertain them and engage them with those books. And all of the money, again, that we raise for the book sale, for the books, that actually buys back books. It purchases books for the classrooms. That goes directly to the classrooms. Spirit Wear is another way that we're fundraising this year. It's just a more challenging year. And we're working on other ideas for types of remote events and ways to engage people and keep them engaged online. So that's generally the information about what we're doing, why we're raising money, and what we're doing with that money. We're certainly open to additional ideas or people that are interested in joining, participating, whether it's to be part of the board or to volunteer at an event. So we're open to all, whatever support anybody wants to add.
Great, thank you very much, Nancy and Doreen. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Diane?
I don't have any questions. Well, actually I do. The website, if people want to participate in the fundraiser, if we don't have elementary kids, is it just the PTSO.com?
Doreen, is it Rhinebeck PTSO still?
I don't know about I don't know about the website. The Facebook page is Rhinebeck PTSO. We have a Facebook page, and I know there was a Twitter account, and there was also but I don't know if anybody's doing anything with those. We need some people to join. So we're still looking for people to come and participate. I take care of the Facebook page, but I'm not sure about a website, but we'd have to check into that.
Yeah, there is a website, but it hasn't been very active. So you can definitely, the Facebook page is
Yeah.
probably the easiest way to get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Thank
You
you
know,
for everything that you're doing to help the schools.
thank you.
Anybody else? No, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to committee reports, stakeholder relations. Just before we get started, remind everybody that we all have the note in front of us, and we can just stick to the decisions and any board actions that we need to take. So stakeholder relations first.
Sure. So the committee met on February 4th, and we spoke about the family town hall that Albert led, and agreed that the town hall communications are a productive use of our available technology and make it convenient for families to remain connected to district happenings from the comfort of their own homes. And we also agreed it would be beneficial to host superintendent-led town halls on a regular basis, maybe monthly or every 6 weeks. Albert leads similar meetings on a weekly basis with district faculty and staff and has received an overwhelmingly positive response. And so the committee requests the board's input on the frequency of these future virtual town halls. We also discussed the new website for the district and the formation of these 2 subcommittees. Steve Jensen gave us an update on these, that the committee meetings are well underway. And we discussed the fact that the Board of Education brings a unique voice to this conversation as a bridge between the community and the district. And the committee would like to receive feedback on the board's desired changes to the current web platform, with specific attention to board engagement with and inclusion in the new platform. And so our idea was to solicit feedback from each individual board member about that. And Albert, I don't know if you wanted to speak more to that process, or if we've quite nailed down what that
Yeah.
exact process will be.
I think as we were going through examining why websites are used, one of the biggest functions is to look at the board ongoings, like being able to look at the agenda, look at past minutes. There's just in our current system, it links to PDFs. I know that for some of you who've been on the board for a while, you've seen the board docs presentation, which allows for a much more searchable for policy, for anytime there was a motion involving someone by searching by name. There are just other ways. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss getting the Board of Ed's input on whatever vehicle we choose, because the board plays such a critical and special role as it relates to public connection and why websites are used. So I think that's what we were hoping to not ignore that and get too far down the road without taking that input in. And it doesn't only have to be the website itself, but it can also be any other applications that integrate with the website for effective communication on behalf of the board.
Okay, thank you, Albert. With regard to the brochure, Steve Jensen and Albert will meet and go over the digital revisions to the brochure, and there'll be a follow-up to our committee at our next monthly meeting. We have PTSO on the committee meeting minutes, but that is now a moot point. I'd like to thank Doreen and Nancy for coming tonight. We're thrilled that you were both able to join us. And our next item of business was the communications plan. We decided that Steve Jensen will be sharing this document with the committee via a Google Doc, and we'll continue to review and fine tune its contents. And the last topic was Parent Night, which the District Wellness Committee has been hard at work planning a parent night for parents and children 12 and over to attend, where Lynn Lyons who is a New Hampshire-based psychotherapist and speaker who specializes in anxiety reduction for children and families, will be coming to join us, and that will be taking place on March 3rd from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. via Zoom, and all are welcome. Again, families and children 12 and over. And our next meeting will be Thursday, March 4th.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions for stakeholder relations? Diane?
So the feedback that you're looking for on the website, how do you want us to do that? Do you want us to email the committee or Albert, or how should we get that to you if we don't have it today?
Albert, did you want to speak to that? I mean, we were talking about asking for that after the fact. We didn't want to put anybody on the spot today with that.
Okay.
And we were hoping that each member could kind of sit with the website and engage with it and then give some feedback based on that experience.
Yeah, I think that that is it's Jackie, Megan, and Matt are on that committee. So I think just filtering it, you could either just send it. We just want to make sure it's represented. I think an email would be appropriate and fine. We were not expecting everyone to just come with that at the ready.
Anybody else? Jacqueline?
Yeah, and you wanted feedback about frequency of family town halls, right?
Yes.
I guess my question for Albert is, do you have a feeling of kind of a bubbling up of a need at regular intervals, or, or
I will say, I think that what I've been doing on the inside, I've been hosting a meeting actually weekly for all district employees every Thursday afternoon. And in doing that, I believe that it's created a stronger culture around just there's this comfort in knowing that there's going to be an update. There's going to be, even sometimes like the last one was only 13 minutes, but I went on, I synthesize whatever data is out there. I give an update what the health department said. So I think there's some comfort in knowing it's coming. So for me, I would rather say we're going to do it every once a month or every 6 weeks, every other month, so that people know that there's going to be in a presentation. So there's something that they can rely on and know, and not have it just be like a surprise. So I'm looking from just basically perspective, if we think that it should be like every other month or 6 weeks. I feel that I'd like to put out a schedule of that and just let people know, so that there isn't anxiety wondering if there will be another update or things like that. And granted, if there's something major happening, we would be able to convene a session like that. Every time I'm always a little, nervous just to put myself out there to not know what to expect. But every single time I'm always just blown away by the very productive direction of the conversation. People offer really good ideas, and they follow up with emails, and I'm able to, get momentum from it. So every single time it's been very positive. So I think it's something the community values. And I just was looking for input from your perspective of what we think would be best.
I think, especially considering how productive they seem to have been and what positive reception they've had, I would think on the more frequent side of that would be good, particularly because things are changing regularly, and there are always kind of finer points, questions coming up along the way. What's happening with sports? What's happening with, revising the way we're interacting on campus. So I'm guessing you wouldn't have trouble coming up with things to summarize, and that people wouldn't have trouble coming up with questions. So I lean towards monthly, unless that felt like too much. That's my 2 cents.
I agree with Jacqueline. I would say, basically, if you did it once a month, that's 4 between now and the end of the school year. And there's so much goes on between now and then, there'll probably be, a lot of questions. So maybe once a month, I would say, through the end of the year, through June.
Right. Yeah, I'm fine with that. And is there I think what we could also do that, we could use that collectively, so it can be a comprehensive update. One idea that is kind of tied to, as we're going to be starting the budgeting process, I think any information about what is going on, any opportunity to connect with people, that would be good. So one other thing that we talked about was even maybe inviting someone to join. So like if a board member wanted to come with me as like a special guest for a portion of that, so we could also look at institutionalizing this, not as a COVID response, but just as a healthy district communication protocol. So we may, because one feedback that I got that really resonated with me, that still does, is parent who is very thankful and very, appreciative, but said, I'd love to hear about anything other than COVID. And I thought that was a very valid point, and I think we've been operating so much in an emergency mode, but there's a lot of ideas and vision happening. So I think communicating out that and shifting the town halls to be future focused might be a good direction to take them. So we could invite people, I could invite Tom. So we can almost do like a budget coffee, could be one of the town halls, something like that could be a town hall type event.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that would be great. I think once a month is probably the right time frame as well. It keeps it kind of consistent and easy to find.
Okay, so I'll look at a pattern of maybe like, the first Monday of every month or something like that, and then I'll put that out. Okay.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, we'll next move on to Duchess BOCES board nominations. We have Karen Smythe here with us today, so I'll turn it over to you, Karen. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to spend a few minutes just to introduce myself. So my name is Karen Smythe. I am a Dutchess County native. I currently live in Red Hook. Been here for almost 6 years now. My background is in business. I have a master's of business administration. I was in corporate marketing for about 11 years, and then I came to work for our family business, which is CB Strain and Son, mechanical contracting firm. And I'm sure we've done some work for the Rhinebeck school buildings over the years. And I ran that business until we sold it in 2012 to a larger company called Dynamic Systems, which is the company that owns and runs it now. They actually have the HVAC contract for the BOCES capital project, actually, but I no longer have anything to do with that. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to that kind of project. After that, I was an executive director for a small nonprofit in Hyde Park. And most recently, I was a candidate for New York State Senate in 2018 and 2020. And it was really through that it reinforced my just real commitment to education and real understanding that education is really at the foundation of the health of all of our students, our families, our businesses, our communities. And that's why I'm seeking the nomination to serve on the Dutchess County BOCES board. My particular passion is career and technical training. And BOCES offers a complex array of services to all of the school boards that help you maximize the use of each of your dollars, and also gives you an opportunity to provide really each student with their opportunity to find their path to success. I see an opportunity to increase communication between BOCES and all of the school boards, which is really one of the key reasons why I wanted to be here tonight, was to say that this is, to me, part of what it means to be on the BOCES board would be to connect with you as a component. It's funny language for me. A component is a machine part in my world, but I'm learning. But I really do think that it's through that communication back and forth that we can enhance the opportunities for creative thought about how to, again, maximize the services that BOCES can offer so that you all can maximize your budget. Budgets are always tight, and that's just going to be even more so, certainly over the next couple of years. And so I bring my business experience. I bring my board experience. I was on the Mid-Hudson Children's Museum board for many years. I am still on the Bardavon board as the immediate past president, and I served as a trustee of Vassar College, my alma mater. And I bring my community and business connections and my deep dedication to all the people of Dutchess County. And so it would be an honor to serve you and all of Dutchess County on the board of Dutchess BOCES, and that's why I'm here to seek your nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that with us. Does anybody have any questions, comments for Karen? Again, Jacqueline?
I just want to say thank you for coming, and I don't know, I can't speak for everybody else, but I know I really appreciate getting to see people when they're running for positions on BOCES. It's great to put a face with the name and to connect. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come meet with us.
Thank you.
Again, thanks for coming. I know with the capital project and Dr. Hooley retiring, we're going to need a very strong board, and good luck with the running.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the 2021-2022 initial budget presentation. Tom?
So I'm going to start this off.
So
this
handing it over.
we're going to be doing things. I think I sort of discussed this at the committee level. So we'll be approaching this somewhat differently this year, and I'm going to try to narrate that for everybody, for all of us, as we begin the process. So tonight is really the first of a series of presentations that we'll be doing. And my vision for this is that there is an accompanying slide deck. So to make the communication more clear and consumable for community members, my intention would be that we actually excerpt these sections out and isolate them in the board or in the budget section of our website so people could access and review all of those. So this is just the first of those formal presentations. So I'm going to share my screen and let's see here. Can we all see that? Are we good? Yeah. Okay. So now, for many of you who've been through the budgeting process for a school district, some of this will be very, very obvious, but I think it's always good to understand what exactly a school budget is. And so I'm going to explain it from a very, very basic level, just so that we can all be on the same page in terms of our approach as in our preparation for next year's plan. So the first thing, I'm actually missing a slide. I am terrible with my technology today. I am so sorry. It is built to support programs. So we do not start with a bottom line or do not start with the numbers. We first start with analysis of our program and tying it to vision. And so the budget supports a broader vision for a district. And so that is what this planning is. This is not just a mathematical exercise. This is a process in exploring our values and exploring our weaknesses and areas for improvement and connecting all of that through a plan. And to the second bullet's point, a plan that has a vision to the future, because we are not making decisions that impact only 1 year. We're looking at this as part of a broader, long-term, responsible fiscal shape so that we can sustain those programs that we have vision for. And finally, and most importantly, it's created to support the board's priorities. So as we make decisions and as we look at this, beyond just the percentages, which are so compelling and easy to look at, there's a discussion about the core values and the priorities and how the fiscal plan supports those priorities. So one of the things that we are doing is we're just taking a step back and really analyzing all of those steps that have been just traditionally done and asking, is there a different way of doing them? So one thing that we're doing differently is we are having much more thorough conversations with the budget directors. And when I use the phrase budget directors, that means those administrators who supervise areas of the budget or other personnel who supervise areas of the budget. So in addition to reviewing the fixed or reoccurring expenses, which we are going to be doing tonight, we have also taken a deep dive at looking at staffing. So that third bullet there, for each of the school buildings or each of the departments, we've had thoughtful conversations with those administrators about staffing needs, in particular, looking at enrollment, looking at projections. And that is something different than we've normally done. It's a whole separate meeting. Further, we're having very in-depth and thorough discussions with the budget directors about their curriculum or their program proposal. That is also tied to vision. So this is where there's an intersection of educational progress and looking at our student performance, assessing where we are and what are the areas that we can improve, or things that are so important, like our golden goose that we have to protect. And those conversations are happening on a single budget director with Tom, Christine, and myself, asking very thoughtful, probing questions to very much understand the foundation of the program. So we actually had one of those today, in fact, and it was a very extensive meeting. It went almost double the time I think we planned for it, but we covered a lot of substantial ground, and it was really rooted in the vision and the philosophy, and thinking through all of those elements. You can see this is all things that most people would assume happen, that everybody develops the budget for their area of supervisions. That goes all the way to the teachers who serve as grade level chairs, team leaders, or department chairs. They're proposing those budgets, they give to the principal, and then we review all of that. We are requesting this year a narrative be attached to that, so there is a link to the overall program. And the third bullet is what I had just referenced before. And then we will always be providing with the board, the full picture of those sections. And we will also be providing, that first full draft. And I'll show you a timeline of when that is going to occur. And the key dates I included here on this slide, but there are a lot of checkpoints along the way that I'll preview here. As many of you know, the most expensive drivers of a school district budget is going to come out of that top category through the people. People make a school district really is an assembly of people. In addition to that, there is the student support services, all of the curriculum, the materials and supplies, the professional development for our staff, and then the infrastructure, the facilities, transportation, technology, maintenance of the physical plant. And the revenue, the largest of those you'll see in a pie chart actually comes from the property taxes. This year, there's been a lot of discussion about the aid package as described in the governor's proposed executive budget. We will be discussing that a little bit later, and I know that several of the board members engaged in that discussion with the legislators when we talked about how the budget that is funding schools is currently using federal aid to fill in a gap that ought to be filled in by state aid, and the federal aid be used to support specific COVID related expenses. But that is still being handled in tiers above our level in the state legislature. Here's a graphic showing the current budget's percentages of where revenues are derived from. It's self-explanatory. You can see that the bulk of this does come from property tax, and a much smaller portion coming from state aid. So again, I incorporated some student art. So I think it's so interesting that you can't walk through hallways anymore and see art for the students. So I just want to make sure that you know that there's still beautiful things being created. So these are some of the guidelines that we're using in our conversations with administrators to develop the budget. So first, we have to respond to the pandemic. We would be irresponsible to just say, oh, we're going to just create the same budget we've always had, because this is a year unlike any other, similar to how last year was a year like any other. But we're looking at how are we going to address those unique learning needs that have emerged as a result of intermittent closures, as any learning loss. How will we assess? And what is currently unknown? We have not got yet clear guidance from the state in terms of what the school district will be expected to produce in terms of forms of or models of education. Will we be required to support remote learning for those who choose to receive it? Those terms are yet to be defined. So we want to make sure that we have a plan that is dynamic and flexible to deal with that uncertainty. I think that is one thing COVID has taught us, is that we have to be prepared for anything and to be responsible in our planning as such. The next one is supporting curriculum shifts. We have to continue to grow. Curriculum standards, they have changed over time. We need to make sure that we are staying contemporary with those changes, as well as the approaches to teaching and learning. We've learned a lot about how technology can be an asset, how use of video streaming such as this technology, it would have been unheard of 2 or 3 years ago to think of we could actually connect with students in this way, but now it's normal as anything. And so looking at how the budget supports some of those shifts in the standards, so the next generation learning standards are looked at full implementation in the next school year. Obviously, there's been some interruption with the planning of the implementation, but it's still our shift in our plan. We have a timeline for all of the implementation of those standards. That will be presented to the board as part of the curriculum and professional development sections of the budget at a later meeting. And next, looking at opportunities and support. So we're looking at access and growth for each student. So this gets to not only the unique academic needs and access to academic areas for all students, but also the social, emotional, and mental health needs that our students have for either individuals or groups of students, and making sure that we have experiences that are enriching as well. So not only focusing on those areas of support, but also those areas for enriching an experience for students in those areas. So even with our size, finding creative ways to make sure that every student is finding themselves in a place that is inspiring and enriching. And the planning for that does take thought and concerted, direction. So that is one of our other principles as we're developing the fiscal plan for next year. Also, the maintenance of our facilities. This goes without saying. We are in the final stages of the project, which we talked extensively about earlier today, and I reassert that it was such a smart project to have so much maintenance and improvement done across the entire district. And that commitment is important because you never want to let any of those areas fall to the wayside, because at that point it becomes much more expensive. So it's been a very smart investment to tend to all those maintenance needs, as well as the infrastructure and technology to support that. So that is a shift. We have one-to-one devices. Those devices will age. Having plans for that is all part of our thought process. And so here's the proposal for the board's consideration in terms of the presentation schedule. So tonight is just this overview, introduction, and kind of talking through the process, and then looking at the next meeting to discuss revenues, the operations, maintenance, and technology portions of the budget, and March 9th, the instructional program, special services, and then looking at the initial budget. So that would be the completed, full document, with another follow-up meeting to review that document on the 23rd. Now, the one significant change here is that I am looking at amending the original calendar to take out that budget workshop, the Saturday morning budget workshop, because Tom and I are replacing that with very deep and thorough sessions with the administrators. And so that's something that I put out there for the board's consideration as a shift in how this is developed. And I think at this point, either we could pause for any clarifying questions about process, Tom, or I can turn it over to you for the fixed expenses.
We can have, if the board members have any questions about that, that's perfect time to be talking about about how we're putting the budget together this year.
Anybody have any questions? I'd just like to talk a little bit more about the workshop. So that's typically been a time where people from the community come and hear things and discuss things. So is that going to be somehow done differently, or is that not going to be part of it, since so much is going to be communicated throughout the budget process?
I'm open to either. I'm actually also open to even having more frequent community education opportunities on the budget, whether that is through one of the regularly scheduled town halls or having additional sessions that we could host. I'm open to that. I think I'm really looking for, with at the board's pleasure for what makes the most sense, but I'm open to those. I think the biggest shift we're looking at is not having the budget directors come and present each of those, because I think that Tom and I will be able to speak to those with really clear narratives and guidance there.
I think one other thing that could be very helpful for this year, and it's just something I thought of, just, something we've never done before, but thinking now with all this technology and everything, and we do post all of our board meetings online, but maybe what we could do is clip those sections that just deal with the budget and separate them out from everything else. I mean, you still have the full meeting, but in our budget section, we could just put in what was discussed at the last presentation. So people could view just that portion of the meeting and not have to find, it throughout the entire meeting.
Yes, that is a proposal. I think I said that before I started.
Oh, you did? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think so. I maybe didn't, but I think I did.
Anybody else? Diane?
So you would imagine during each of these sessions, when board members have questions, that the two of you will be able to answer those detailed questions as they come up, or during the presentations like February 23rd or March 9th.
Yeah, I think we would invite when those sections are being presented, we can actually, invite if we anticipate. One of the things that I think we'll do is we'll get the information to the board in a timely fashion so that we can look for any anticipated areas. But I am taking the position where I am trying to make sure that no stone is unturned in terms of my own understanding of everything and looking through that, so that I would be able to present that to all of you. But like I said, I'm very comfortable doing it the way that it has been done. I was just offering out an idea there.
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to change that Saturday work session to be more productive. So I would be open to, trying it this way to see if it might be more productive, because, instead of in 4 hours trying to go over everything, it's broken down a little bit more, so that this might be a better way.
Yeah, our intention was to not look at this as a draft of the whole over and over, and to really drill down into sections. That's what and then still present an initial with the whole. And so we were trying to do a hybrid, like we were looking at this year as a transition of potentially shifting it. And I think the other part that has to be taken into consideration is increased communication and increased explanation and narrative throughout the process, as opposed to only being the full document, just bottom line right off the bat, and just doing that throughout. That would be the most, I think, significant shift.
Makes sense to me. Willing to try something different. As like Diane said, I think we're all looking to try to make that Saturday meeting more productive or done in a different way, so. Tom, do you want to go through the next part?
Mark has his
Yep.
hand.
I'm ready. Okay,
Wait,
so,
Mark had his hand up.
oh, sorry.
Off my screen here.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if it might be beneficial if we took a few minutes out of each of the town halls to speak about a section of the budget, maybe not, cover the whole thing, but one section or the other, and give people an opportunity to hear what's being discussed and ask questions at those, rather than having to come out to the workshop. But I'll defer to other people's thoughts on that.
I personally, as the presenting at those, I am more than, I think that is an important thing to integrate into everything that we do, because it can't be so isolated. So I think a town hall is a perfect topic to discuss, because it's connected to the plan, it's connected to the program, and I think that is it's a nice way to do it.
Okay. All right. So I'm ready. So just two other calendar type of things that I just quickly, we are looking to adopt the budget on April 13th. So that's the first meeting in April. But we do have to April 22nd is the last day that we can adopt the budget. So I just want to get that out there. And the last day to submit for a Board of Education trustee seat is April 19th. There's still some questions around the whole process yet, but that is the last day to submit your petitions to the district clerk to be put on the ballot for a trustee seat. So I just want to get that other two important dates coming up. What I did want to do is do a brief update on the enrollment. When our Beds Day, we had 957 students in grades K through 12. We have one ungraded student, so it doesn't fall into it. We're currently at 946 students. So since Beds Day, we have 11 fewer students than when we began the year with. And that happens almost typically throughout the year. We usually see it high and then we start to lose a couple as the year goes along typically. Excuse me. I just did want to mention to you, there are 3 grade levels that we're looking closely at and really looking at their enrollment. And that will be our current 3rd grade and our current 4th grade. Their numbers are pretty high. And so we're going to be looking closely at that over the next month to see what type of potential movement there is with those particular enrollment numbers. And at the 7th grade, it's the self-contained classroom is going to the 7th grade. And that, as you know, is a bubble class. So I just want you to know that it is a bubble class. But I think totally within the confines of the middle school, we'll have to have John work on that to make sure that that's going to work for his scheduling. Those are just the 3 areas where I think enrollment is a concern that we have to be aware of as we go forward. But the most important part of tonight's meeting is to start to go through the various sections, and most of these costs are pretty much known to us now, but there will be some changes as we go forward. And I'll try to be, as concise as I can be. But at the same time, know that these aren't the final numbers in every case. In some cases it is. And other cases, as I go through, I'll let you know that they aren't final. And the first code when we get into the employee benefits is the employee retirement system. The employee retirement system rates are going up. On average, and this is average, they're going from 14.6% to 16.2%. So it is a little bit of an increase. And as Steve has taught me how this all works with the actuaries and the stock market and their portfolio and everything, ERS is not doing as well as the teacher retirement system. And you'll be able to tell when you look at these contribution rates. But in looking at it, we've already basically presented our bill from next year, and it's going to be approximately $565,000, which is an increase of about $65,000. And that's 2 factors, and that is the contribution rate is increased, and they're anticipating, and this is provided by the employee retirement system, they project salaries going up, of course. So what we are going to do and what to take a look at too is because in some cases, some of the tiers went above the 2%, not sure if we can shelter some of those monies or not. And it's not a lot of money because it's only a 0.1% over the contribution rate. But you have to look at each one individually. And that is something new this year. For the first time it's happened. So we're waiting for some information as to whether or not we're able to shelter anything. In aggregate, we're below the 2% increase, but individually by tiers, we're not. So that's a question that has to be answered by the state education department. So the next one is a very big number, and that's the teacher's retirement system. In the teacher's retirement system, we have an estimated rate now. We at first had a range of between 9.5 and 10%. It came out just last week that they're estimating the rate is 9.8%. Now they qualify that as estimate. In my 30 years of doing this, I've never seen them change that number. Once they come out with that estimate, for the past 30 years, that's what it's been. So I'm using 9.8%. Due to various factors, this is basically a $3,200 increase from the previous year. So that's very nice, very little, not a big increase. So $3,200. It's very interesting. If you take a look at the history of the contribution rates, and if you ever want a history of this and wants further detail, please reach out to me. It's been very interesting how each of these retirement systems have changed in the 30 years I've been in this business. We've gone down to almost zero at one point and almost as high as, well, 17.5%. And so we always have to safeguard about that and be very much aware that the stock market plays a huge role in the contribution rates applied by the Comptroller's Office and the New York State Teachers Retirement System. So just want you to be aware of those things, but teacher retirement system is looking to be in pretty good condition as we go forward. When it comes to Social Security, we do have a slight increase this year. And it's not so much, what's happening here is the Social Security has not increased the rates. It's still 0.65%. That has not changed and hasn't changed in decades. But there is one number that does change, and that is it's called the Old Age Survivors Disabilities Limit. And that keeps on increasing, which means that we pay extra amounts above and beyond a threshold. And that threshold went up quite a bit this past year. So that potentially created some extra money going into Social Security. They raised the limit and we end up paying more for that. So I'm looking at about a $78,000 increase due to that. But it is what it is. It's been fairly consistent for a number of years. So, you know, it's really just a little bit of an adjustment up. But remember, that Social Security line is always going to be higher than your typical salary increase. It just always is. It just works out that way going forward and always will. The next section, which I don't have really anything for you, and that is the workers' compensation. Workers' comp meeting will be held this Friday, where we will set the rates. As you remember, a few years ago, we actually had a workers' comp reserve because the rates had been going up, 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 and up. But the consortium has done a lot of work, and we're actually dropping, our contribution rate is dropping tremendously across all school districts in Dutchess County, not just us. But ours is dropping quicker than the other ones because our safety record has been so good. And I'm knocking on wood because I want to make sure that it stays that way. So we've been doing really good. Last year, it was basically 139,000. As far as I know, at our last workers' comp meeting, we were doing as good as the previous year. So I don't expect that number to go up. So, but I will know more about this on Friday and we'll update the numbers. So in the budget so far, I've kept it at last year's amount, but I would expect that that could change as we go forward into next month. So the next rendition of that, I'm hoping that will be a little bit lower just because we are doing well. And that comes to the next big one, and it's the biggest line item in our entire budget, and that is health insurance. So right now, I'm currently figuring this out on a 4% increase, okay? That is on the high side right now. And I can tell you that right now. I believe we're looking at something between 0 and 2% is what we're looking at. Just initially coming out with a 4%, just initially, but I do see this number coming down. I do have a meeting next Wednesday where we'll get a better idea of what that number is, but the final rates are not done until March. And that's when we'll get our final one. So as we take a look at this, and it comes out to almost a 4% increase right now, a little 4.29%, but we could see that go down quite a bit based upon the DHIC rates. Like I said, we'll know that in about 5 weeks. We will know exactly what that rate is, and that will come out. And I hope that will be a very good number for us as we go forward. And so we're looking at about a $285,000 budget to budget increase. So things are looking really good there. And I see, Jacqueline, you have your hand up. I see a hand up there. So I don't want to wait to the end because you lose your thought. And so wanted to hear what you had to say, Jacqueline.
Thank you. It was a stupid question. I mean, maybe not
No
stupid,
question is stupid.
Yeah,
It is not.
I'm sure I've asked this before, but I never remember. When you're talking about the rate percentages, particularly with respect to the ERS and TRS, do you mean the percentage increase from what we paid last year, or does the rate percentage refer to something else?
Right. So let's say when I said that the teacher retirement system was 9.8%, that's what they're charging the salary. So if, let's say there was $1 million worth of salaries to the teachers, make it this very simplified, $1 million, and the rate was 9.8%, I would owe the retirement system $98,000. So I'm paying 9.8% of teacher salaries. And in the retirement system for TRS, it doesn't matter what tier you're in. You get charged the same. When it comes to ERS, it's completely different. Everything is by each tier, tier 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is very important because ERS did something, and TRS did too. They created a tier 6. But the tier 6 is very different from all the previous tiers. They pay more into the program. They individually pay into the program. And what used to be in tiers 3 and 4, after 10 years, they stopped contributing money. In the new tiers 5 and 6, they contribute for their lifetime. And as their salaries go up, so does the percentage that gets taken out of their salaries, the individual employee salary. So what it does, it decreases the contribution rate from the school district. Give you an example. When we go back to the ERS, tier 1 is paying 18.3%. We are paying 18.3% of all our tier 3 employees. And I think we don't have any anymore. I think the last one just retired. So, but they're paying we're paying 18.3% for tier 1 and tier 4 employees. But next year, tier 6 is 10.7. So you see 18.3 for tiers 3 and 4, and you're seeing tier 6, which is the new tier. Every new employee, not new employee, as long as they're not a part of the system already, they're at 10.7. So as you can see, what this is going to do in the long haul, as our tiers 3 and 4 retire, and as we hire new younger ones, they're going to pick up a bigger percentage of the retirement, and less is going to be on the school district itself. That's something that they did. And when I talk about history, that's what I'm talking about. There's some real history that goes way back with this. So they've done a very good thing for school districts.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify because I did get the impression when you're talking about health insurance, that is a percentage increase over what we paid previous year. It's not a percentage of the salaries, right?
Correct.
So it'd be helpful when you're talking about percentages, if you just give a little refresher at the beginning of each
Okay.
for context, that would be.
fair point. You don't deal with this every day like me and Christine do, so we understand it, but you sometimes it's the first time some of you are even seeing this. So please, anytime you have a question, please don't feel free to interrupt. I'm not seeing everybody on the screen, so if someone sees a hand up, let me know. The last section I wanted to go over here is that the union welfare benefits, we got a slight increase there to that, about $6,500. And that's anticipation of a couple proposed positions. Whether they survive the whole budget process, that's yet to be determined. And if those positions don't survive, those will come out of the budget also. I don't want to put extra money in there. There's no need to have extra money in there. So as we take a look at the entirety of this employee benefit section, you're looking at an increase of a little over 4%, and it's $439,000. Now remember, it's potential that we can reduce the health insurance once we know better numbers. For every percentage point they reduce it by, it's $60,000. So if we go down to 2%, we can save $120,000. So that's what I'm hoping is at least our next budget draft will have it at a 2% range. So to save additional monies. Are there any questions about the employee benefits? Now there's some other ones in here that there's some minor things, the employee assistance program. There's reimbursements for education from the teachers, Annie, and the administrators. They all have within their contracts reimbursements for education. They're prescribed right in our contracts themselves, and they're at the contract amount. So that doesn't change there. Are there any questions about employee benefits at this time? Okay, don't see any. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Christine, who will talk to us about our debt service.
Good evening, everybody. All right, so debt service, I'm going to break it out into two different sections because there are three areas that we do know, and then there's one area that will be changing from currently a ban, which will be bonding out based on the completion of our current capital project. So to begin with, what we do know, we have two existing serial bonds and an energy performance contract. So with the two serial bonds, we have the Excel project from 2009. This will be completing in June of 2024. So that is going to be coming off of our books within the next couple of years. Then we have the bond refunding from 2013. And the bond refunding, what we did in 2013 was we combined the bond from 2005, which was a $23,680,000 bond, and the 1998 bond, which was $3,950,000. And we combined the balance of those two bonds at that point. This bond won't be done until 2034. So the significance of this year, though, is we see a dip in our principal payment of about $620,000, which would have been the last payment of the principal for 1998. So this is showing that it's a really good time to add on new debt. The last of the current bonds that we know is our energy performance contract, and that was from the contract back in 2007. And this is going to be completely paid off in December of 2022. So with the ending of this energy performance contract, we're also going to have to start budgeting for, in Sheldon's budget, to budget for the repairs to our boilers and any maintenance that we will need on those boilers. So as much as it's going to come off in our debt, it's probably in the future years going to be going on into being added on into our maintenance and operations piece of our budget. So with that said, the exciting news is that our bond our bands are going to be coming off because our capital project is coming to a close. So what we currently have right now is our bands, and the way we've been paying for our capital project is through bands, and we've just been borrowing each year on what we think our expenses are going to be, and then we renew that until we can bond it out. So this year we will be paying off the bands and going out for bond. At this point, we're only estimating what those are going to be because we will not be going out for a bond until the end of June. So those rates won't be in completion until, well, we're going to have to estimate it in the budget this year, but we won't know for sure what those rates will come in. We're estimating it right now at 4%, but we most likely will have that down to about 3.5%, which will show a reduction further on. But once we continue working with our bond counsel and get those numbers and more of an accurate projection, we'll be able to show that in the budget. So with that said, if you want to move to the next screen, you can see where things are going to be coming off. So you'll see our principal band for our $12.8 million project and or our principal band and our BOCES capital project. In this current year, we combined those two into one single band so we can get a better rate. So this is the area that these bands are going to be coming off and paid off, and then we're going to be borrowing together the BOCES capital project and the $12.8 million project. So we're going to be showing an increase in our payments here, but we're also going to be showing a decrease in the refunding bond, and that's, it's going to equal out a little bit. But right now we're showing a reduction of $143,000 approximately, which might be reduced even more based on our interest rate that we receive when these bonds are actually put out to the market. So that's where we're at with our debt right now. Any questions or additional comments, Tom?
Nope, you're right on.
Okay.
Okay, I have another question. I know I've asked this before too. I understand bands or bond anticipation notes, but I don't know the implications of what it means to move from a band to a bond. So bands are coming off, bonds are coming on, but what does that mean in terms of, what it costs us or other things? Like what is a layperson take away from that shift?
Okay, I can explain that, I think. So what you have in a band, as you mentioned, a bond anticipation note, a school district can only go out 1 year on those. You're not allowed to go past years. So you'd be doing short-term borrowing every year. So every year you'd be at the whim of what's going on in the market. Second of all, banks don't let you continue to borrow like that. That's where you have to go to. Once you complete a project or get near the end of the project, you have to get your substantial completion certificate. But once you have that, then you go into what is called a serial bond. And it goes out onto the bond market and companies bid on it. And they give you a bid, 3.5%, 2.75, all sorts of things. But that locks in your interest for the rest of your life. So you know how much it is. So give you an example. I think our last borrowing for that refunding bond was about 2.9%, which is a fantastic rate because the other ones, they were like at 5-6%. But once your interest rates gets down so low, it's like, okay, let's refinance these things like you do a house, because you get lower interest payments. Your principal is still the same, but your interest payments go down. So what you're doing with this is you're locking into, and especially now is a good time to borrow money because it's pretty cheap, that you lock into those monies for the next 15 to 20 years. I think it's 15 for our renovations, but 20 for the BOCES expansion, that you're locked into a rate that is known. And first of all, the state education department says you have to. You just can't do that. Just borrow. Because what you could do, you could tie yourself into, let's say, a 2.9% bond. If we get that rate, I'll be jumping up and down for joy. We all should be. But what you're really doing is locking in an interest rate for the life of that particular bond. And what you don't get to happen, because when I first started back in, oh God, 88, interest rates were around 20%. Imagine if you all of a sudden went from paying 15% one year to 20% to 5%, back up to 10. This locks it in forever. It does deal with your building aid too. That's why SED makes you do it too, is that you have to lock it in so SED knows what your building aid is for the next 15 years. They don't want to be at the whim of interest rates.
Thank you. That was clear. That was
You
a
sure?
great reminder. Absolutely. Definitely. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for? No?
Okay. Transportation. We are going out with our home to school. Our home to school is MAT, or total transportation. MAT is their official name, but total is the name on the side of the buses. We will be going out for a RFP in a few short months here. As last year, I don't know if you recall, in fact, I'm sure not all the board members recall because you weren't all board members at that time. Last year in June, MAT informed us that they were going to cancel their contract, that they weren't going to abide by just going up by the CPI. And they can do that because that's an option you have in your contracts after the first 3 years. So they decided to cancel the contract. So we were forced to go out and rebid. And the rebid came in really, really, really high. And we've been able to fit it under this budget for a number of reasons, and I'll get into that later. But we were able to make it work this year. But we couldn't make everything work next year if we had all our runs going everywhere that we typically go at that rate. So this was just a 1-year contract with total. And so we will be going back out to get an RFP. We hear that there are a few more competitors out there this time, and that they won't be the sole bidder, which will be good. So saying that, that's another unknown. What is our rate for next year? We do know defiled transportation's rate, or pretty close. We don't know what the CPI is yet, but we can kind of guess and be pretty close to it. So that's not a big deal. But knowing what the new contractor's rate is, that is an unknown. I'm not going to say what it is here because unless a vendor hears what I have to say, I don't want him bidding on it. So I cannot say in public what I put in there as the daily rate. But I think it's very sufficient for what we need to do. So when I took a look at the transportation area, first of all, it starts with a couple of different areas. And I'll talk about really the main focus right now, and that's the transportation, the buses that run us back and forth from home to school for our special needs students and for our non-public and parochial schools. So in taking a look at field trips, the numbers that I have received back from the principals are the same as what they were this year. And of course, we didn't do any field trips this year. So they have kept their budgets the same. They have not added money nor taken it away. It's right at the same level. That's the same thing with athletic trips. I've kept that at the same level just because we do have fewer and fewer teams. And so there's less transportation that goes on. So that kind of gets involved so that we don't see that number increasing year over year. As rates may increase, we're just doing fewer athletic trips. We have fewer teams. But where we can start doing some things is in residential transportation. We have 13 buses. We have 12 buses that do home to school. And we have one bus that goes to CTI, BOCES CTI. So those are our 13 home to school buses. That's for our regular education. That is going to be approximately 968,500, which is a little bit higher than before. It's about 80,000 more than before, because I am expecting, rates to be higher than what they were the last time, not current year, but where we left off, but not to the point where we are this year. So a little bit of an increase there. But in the handicapped area, in the non-public area, we have some reductions. And a couple of that, and the reasons why that is occurring is we are transporting to fewer special education locations. We know of at least one fewer next year at this time. And also when we come to non-public transportation, one of the schools we budgeted for last year, St. Peter's, has closed. So I've taken that out of the budget. So we've taken 2 bus runs out of the budget. And if we take a look from year to year, it's about a $41,000 increase over the prior year, a little over 2%. I also think that with some clever, speaking, one of the things I spoke to Albert about earlier, not today, but last couple of weeks ago, and I think I've always wanted to do it. And we did it this year for the pandemic. And that was really ask, do you need transportation or not? And we will provide transportation to anybody who's eligible. But to know that they don't need it because they're traveling with, could be a 12th grader who's coming into school and they're going to drive their own car, or it's that 12th grader and he's bringing in his 2 siblings with him, or a neighbor or something like that. If we can know ahead of time that a certain people, or I'm going to say some students may not be traveling, we may have the ability to reduce those 12 home to school buses to 11 or 10. And every one you take off the road is about a $70,000 savings. So that is definitely something that I'm going to want to work with Albert and with our community. And I want people to be sure and know that if you don't request the transportation, the moment you do request transportation, we will get it ready for you. It takes a couple of days, but it's a good way. And I think, like I say, I get upset when I see a bus come in and has 8 kids on it. There's 55 kids assigned to it, but only 8 use it. It gets a little troubling, and I'm glad to think that I would like to see us see if we can experiment and to try to save ourselves some money, is to look at possibly really working on that part of it, as to find out who really wants to drive the buses or ride the buses, so that we can save those monies to our taxpayers. Because we don't get a lot of state aid on our transportation at all. We get the bare minimum. So when we take a look at this, and I talked about the middle section here, contract transportation, but there is another part of transportation, and that deals with my office. 5% of my salary goes towards as you see there, the supervisor's office. That's myself. 5% of my salary gets charged to transportation to get aid back on it. This year, I wish it was 10% because spending a lot more time on transportation this year. And then that's the clerical support staff, which is 2 people in my office. A part of their salary is assigned to the transportation office, once again, for state aid purposes. The next one's computerized routing. We have a routing system that does it. And over the past couple of years, that number has actually come down, which has been very nice. So we're seeing those savings. And also our gasoline has been going down too. Fewer trips, less miles. Gas has been fairly cheap over the past couple of years, so we've been able to reduce that. And then overall, when we look at the bottom line, we're looking at about a $33,000 increase, or about 1.75%. So do you have questions at this time about transportation?
I do, but
Okay.
if other people do. Sorry, I try to put myself in the mindset of like, okay, I'm just an average person, because I am, and how do I make sense of this for other parents? So two questions. One, how long have we had the computerized routing system?
This particular one, probably 7 years now.
Okay. And the other question, I know in the past there was discussion of asking families about their intentions regarding busing, and there was some hurdle, there was some barrier to that. Did that change?
Well, it kind of has changed. And what we're getting out of SED is, as long as you're transporting everybody in, we don't care if you assigned 100 kids to a vehicle, or 60 kids to a vehicle, or five kids to a vehicle. As long as they're getting no complaints as to, they're not, they don't have any room on the bus for me. That would be a real big issue. But SED looks at it as long as you have a seat there if they want it. You don't have to say, I can only have these 60 kids on this bus. They've really came down a couple of years ago and said, you can assign 100 kids to the vehicle, but it may only be 50 kids that actually ride the vehicle, or it could be 10. They don't care. So they've changed their tune about that over the past couple of years, because I think they've seen across the state fewer and fewer students actually riding the bus. And as far as they're concerned, the fewer buses that are on the road, that's less state aid that they have to dole out to the school districts. So they see it as a win-win.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Oh, I see Mark. Unmute yourself, Mark.
So just along the point, the question you were answering for Jacqueline. So at one point, the SED mandated that you had to provide a seat for every student, regardless of whether they rode the bus or not. Is that correct?
At one time, yes. Yep. Then they clarified it. They don't care how many people you assign to it, as long as you don't exceed the maximum number of kids that can be on a bus at a time. Non-pandemic, of course. That's fine.
Diane? Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Albert, Tom, and Christine, for going through this process. I think it's to be very helpful looking at this in a different way this year. We'll move on to good news. Does anybody have any good news?
I've gotten through my first budget presentation of the new year. That's good news.
Got through the first 2 quarters of the school year as well, which is pretty good news.
I mean, one thing, and this has been a theme, is looking at those expanded opportunities for students to experience the school life. So, discussions about the spring musical are underway. Dr. Davenport and I, talked about some of those keystone events. There's a lot of optimism at looking at how we can host some of those things that were lost for at the end of last school year. There's been a lot more understanding about what is possible. So, whether that is, having a prom in the outdoor location under a tent or things like that, there's a lot of creativity out there and a strong commitment to making sure that the students have those experiences. And I think you heard tonight, the PTSO is still having the book fair for the kids. I'm volunteering to read I'm nervous about it. But all of those little, those elements I think are so critical that we focus on that. And I would say that, you know, getting our heads wrapped around how we can honor particularly the, you know, the class of 2021, you know, we have to start really thinking about that. But, you know, I just like that the opportunities for kids are coming back.
Anybody else? Any old business? Another opportunity for public comment? Any other? No. Okay, can I have a motion on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following consent items?
So moved.
Second? Any questions, discussions? All those in favor? That motion passes. Be it resolved that the board hereby approves student participation in the following higher risk winter sports, subject to strict adherence to the guidelines and protocols established by the state and local health authorities, as well as the rules of Section 9 of New York State Public High School Athletic Association, varsity boys and girls basketball, JV boys and girls basketball, middle school intramural basketball.
So moved.
moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Diane?
I'm just wondering, Albert, I'm obviously thrilled that we're able to have sports back. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the protocols that are in place for the sports, a little bit about how they're going to safely proceed.
Right. Yeah. So I'm really grateful that Steve is here. I did invite him so that he could respond to that. He's been in my office almost daily, really talking about the protocols from the section. So Steve, if you wouldn't mind going through some of those.
So one of the first things, all of our sports are going to look different because every kid has to wear a mask at all times. That is something that the section left to the home schools. And if the home schools require masks, then any school that comes to play us has to wear a mask as well. You will see pictures throughout the state where some kids are playing contests with masks, some kids are not using masks. If you're playing a contest at Rhinebeck, you will be wearing a mask. Other protocols, we are sanitizing and encouraging kids to sanitize their hands, to change their clothes and bathe as soon as possible when they get home. Whenever they're meeting at a distance. You know, you're not seeing team huddles that are close anymore. And this is something that's different for kids. You know, they have a tendency to just gather together, and we keep reminding them, you have to spread out, you have to spread out. When they sit on the sidelines, they will be sitting at 6 foot spacings. So we're going to, prior to getting on the bus to go to a contest, we have to do the health screening again. When we get off the bus, temperatures will be checked, as will when a visiting team comes to us, temperatures will be checked again. It's different, but as Albert mentioned, it's exciting because to see the excitement of the kids once they heard sports was coming back, you can kind of feel it in the building. And, you know, so we're starting off very easy here, you know, with basketball, because there's not as many teams. When we hit March 1 and we get into the fall 2 season, and that's our busiest season, it's going to be exciting.
Steve, if we play a school that is not requiring masks, we're still going to be wearing masks, right?
So every school, so for basketball, what the league decided to do was to go with a county-wide schedule. So we are only playing schools in Dutchess County for the winter season. A decision has not been made yet for the fall 2 season, which starts March 1. As of right now, the schedule that we have does have us going to Ellenville, Onteora. Yeah, those would be the Ulster County schools that we would be going to. As of right now, every school in our schedule requires their students to wear masks. So this should not be an issue. If, and you know, I will have a daily phone conversation with whichever AD we are playing. If they're not going to require their kids to wear masks, then we are going to not travel to that school or let them travel to our school.
And are we allowing any spectators at our games?
So there are no, the section came out with regulations for winter sports, for indoor winter sports, and that is there are no spectators at indoor winter sports. I asked last Wednesday at a meeting that I was at whether or not we've made a decision regarding the fall 2 season. A decision has not been made yet. If I look at it, you know, volleyball is a high risk sport, it's an indoor sport, so I would imagine that there would be no spectators at volleyball. What Section 1 did with outdoor sports was they allowed 2 spectators per student for the home school only. We are live streaming all of our contests.
That was my next question. So
Yeah.
there's something for those parents, you know, that's.
Yeah. So to live stream, we have the NFHS network. So the games will be live streamed on the NFHS network, and then they'll be available video on demand after that. So yeah, that's our plan. I was actually working with the cameras the other day to make sure everything is up and running because I hadn't had to worry about it up until yesterday, actually. So.
Well, thank you for all your work on this. I know that this has been difficult, but I can just imagine how excited the kids are just for the opportunity to play.
They are, yes. And thank you for your support.
Always.
Anybody else? Thank you, Steve, for being here and clarifying those questions. All those in favor? That motion passes. The next 3 motions involve retirements of 3 of our veteran teachers. I'd just like to thank them in advance for their many years of service to the district. Upon the motion of the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Ernest Welsh, RHS French teacher, for the purpose of retirement, effective at the close of business on June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor? A motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Lisa Hackett, physical education teacher, for the purpose of retirement, effective at the close of business on June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? A motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the resignation of Terry Kupiak, BMS Mathematics, grade 6 teacher, for the purpose of retirement, effective at the close of business on June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? I have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Karen, for attending tonight.